think I'm having an emotional breakdown. Hey guys, today I'm going to be starting my journey with the Bane Chronicles by many people, by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Rees Brennan, and Maureen Johnson. I am really excited to get to these. I have just finished the Mortal Instruments series, which really upsets me that I've finished that series now. But it's amazing because now I can move on. This is a short story collection, if you didn't know. It features 11 stories featuring all Magnus Bane. And it goes through his life. I think there's many a story about things that have been mentioned in the past and things that have kind of been hinted towards. And we get to learn more about Magnus, which I'm all for. I am going to be reading this. I don't really have a set format, but because it's short stories, I don't think I feel the need to binge. I feel as though I'll be more than happy. Sorry if you can hear the fireworks. I'm starting this the day before Bonfire Night. Some people just didn't get the memo. And I'm going to be reading this. And like I said, I don't feel the pressure to kind of like binge the story and get through it as much as I can because I need to know how it ends. Because there's so many short stories, I could probably take this easier. So I don't know. I might do 1 story a day, 2 stories a day. I think each story is roughly around 50. I'm making that up if I'm completely honest with you. I'll just check. 50, 90. Yeah, so about 40 to 50 pages maximum. So I could do 1 or 2 stories a day. I'll just see how I feel. And that way it'll be over probably, if I do 2 stories a day in about 5-6 days, which is fine. It's fine by me. It's all good. But I'm going to be starting this. I'm really excited about it. And I'm hoping that I love it. I love Bane. He's my favourite character, and I feel as though this is going to lead to an emotional breakdown for me. I'm excited. Ooh. Okay, so I'm just going to get into it. I'm going to get started, and I'm going to be reading the first story now, which is What Really Happened in Peru. So I'll catch up with you guys when I find out what happened in Peru. Hey guys, so I've just read the first story of the Bane Chronicles, which is called What Really Happened in Peru. I was not a fan, to be honest. I started out the story and I thought, yeah, it'll be fine, I'll enjoy it, it'll all be good. And this was a story because I think it's been kind of well known in the series that Bane was banned from ever entering Peru by Peruvian warlocks. And I thought, great, we'll find out why. This will be quite funny because no doubt it's going to be a funny story because it's about Magnus Bane and his life. No, instead we went on a journey, and I think there was about 4 or 5 different parts. Like, it just kept jumping forward in time from like the oldest to the most recent time he went to Peru. And each story was a bit dramatic, and it always ended with it saying, now you would think this is why Bane was exiled and banned from ever returning to Peru. But in fact, this was not that story. He was still allowed in Peru after this. And I just thought, right, so it's going to be the very last one. I didn't like that he kept doing that. I thought, well, why are you telling me stories about why he weren't banned from Peru instead of telling me why he was? But I thought, okay, I'll roll with it. I'll get to the end. We'll find out why he was banned from Peru. And another thing, actually, throughout all of these stories, there's no action. Like, it keeps saying, it keeps giving us like an introduction. Like, I'm thinking of one particular time. He was with Katarina and Ragnar, and they said, oh, it would be nice for us to start this adventure together. And then that story ended, and it was literally just, since they started this story, they found out that they were wanted criminals for desecrating a church or something like that. And I thought, well, why didn't you show us that part of the story? That sounds more fun. Like, surely we'd enjoy that more. And they didn't do that. They didn't show us any of the things that got him banned from Peru. They just told us about it. In the first example of it, it told us he was with Ragnar, and then it said Ragnar threw a temper tantrum and sank a ship full of really valuable things. And I was like, well, why didn't you show us this temper tantrum? Why didn't you show us what happened? Why did the ship sink? Show us all of that, and it didn't. It just showed us the build-up. And I really didn't like it. And then, the final bit. It says, let me just find it now. I'm really annoyed. Magnus's sudden turn to a life of crime, shockingly enough, was not the reason he was banned from Peru either. The High Council of Peruvian Warlocks met in secret, and a letter was sent to Magnus several months later announcing he'd been banned from Peru, on pain of death for crimes unspeakable. Despite his inquiries, he never received an answer to the question of what he had been banned for. To this day, whatever it is that actually got him banned from Peru is, and perhaps must always remain, a mystery. We never even found out what really happened to get him banned from Peru. What was the point in that story? That was literally the point of the story, was finding out what got him banned from Peru. And they haven't told us, and it's really frustrating. So I'm not happy with that. How I'm going to rate this, I don't think I told you. How I'm going to rate this is each individual story I'm going to give a personal rating to. And then overall, I'm going to collate all of those ratings, and it should give me an accurate representation of an overall rating on how I found the stories. This one I weren't happy with. It was readable, but I wasn't happy with it. I'm glad it's done. I think I'm going to give it a 2-star rating because I was not happy with that short story. I feel as though the story focused on the wrong things, and then the parts of the story that were actually relevant and important and fun and the parts we wanted to see weren't included. And we never found out what happened in Peru. And I'm annoyed about that. But that is my thought. That is my feeling. This one is a 2-star. I'm going to move on now to the next one, which is The Runaway Queen, which is Cassandra Clare and Maureen Johnson, which I'm quite excited to see. This first one, I can't remember if I said. If it is, I'll cut it out. This first one, What Really Happened in Peru, was by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan. So this is now a story with Cassandra Clare and Maureen Johnson, which is The Runaway Queen. So I will chat to you guys when I finish The Runaway Queen. And I've just finished book 2, which was The Runaway Queen. And that one was written by Cassandra Clare and Maureen Johnson. I enjoyed this one more. This one was actually quite fun. It was easier to read, and it gave me a level of satisfaction that the first one just didn't. I feel as though the first one gave me a question of what happened in Peru and then didn't deliver. This one, I feel as though it told us what was going to happen, it delivered. Also had quite a bit of emotion in there, which I enjoyed. I thought that was good. It wasn't overplayed. It didn't need to be overdone. With short stories, I always feel they can be unnecessary to the point where you think, I don't feel as though this needed to be written. Or it can go the other way of, this needs to be a longer book and it's not given the time and attention it needs. And sometimes you get some that are right in the middle, and you're just like, you know what? That didn't need to be longer. It was perfect kind of as it was. It was fine. And I feel as though that's where this book was, right in the middle. It was by no means a perfect book. There were a few things that I really enjoyed but didn't love. I feel as though there was potential for more character development than what we got. I don't feel as though this is our Magnus yet. This is my personal thing. This doesn't read as the Magnus Bane I've known from the Infernal Devices and the Mortal Instruments. It doesn't feel like him, and I don't know why. Maybe it's not his personality showing through. You can see tiny little snippets of what his personality is. The sarcasm, the fun, the free willingness. But it's not as much as I'm used to, and I don't know how I feel about that. Overall, I really enjoyed the second story. It was based in France. It was about Marie Antoinette. It was quite good. And I really enjoyed the end with the fact that he has this emotional connection to this guy Axel and his response to him at the story. And he has an old couple who help, kind of like servants for him, and they were murdered by vampires because he betrayed the vampires to help Axel. And it really, I could feel that level of emotion for the fact that the two servants he had were killed for that, and I really liked that. I also love the fact that he got a monkey. That was quite funny. It was kind of very stereotypical Magnus. I enjoyed it. It was a much better story than the first one. So I'm going to give this story a 3-star, I think. these could all potentially change. I think if I read future stories and they were really bad, I could change the first ones. If I read them and they were amazing, I could change these ones. These are all just kind of right now feelings. This is how I am feeling. And I'm feeling this was a 3-star book. It was very good, really enjoyed it, had some issues with it, so it wasn't going to be a perfect book. But I'm really excited to read the 3rd and 4th and 5th and onwards story now, because I feel as though the first one for me was just a bit of a flop. This one got better. So the 3rd one, I'm just hoping it just increases each time in my enjoyment level. So we'll see how we do. Now, the next story is Vampires, Scones and Edmund Herondale. And that one is Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan again. And I'm intrigued to see how this one is. I'm intrigued. I want to know who Edmund Herondale is. I'll find out. Chat to you guys when I finish this. Hello, guys. So, sorry, I'm doing some work. I have just finished story number 3 from the Bane Chronicles, which was... Why didn't I remember this? Vampires, Scones, and Edmund Herondale. I love that one. I started out a bit dubious because the first one wasn't that great, and then the second one was okay. This one was amazing. So we got to see Edmund Herondale. That was kind of obvious. Who is Will Herondale's father? Now, obviously, you should know if you're watching this one. You should know because you should have seen my Infernal Devices. But Edmund Herondale is Will Herondale, who is the main character of the Infernal Devices. Edmund is Will's father. And we got to see Edmund meet Magnus. And we got to see Edmund and Magnus meet Will's mum, which was great because you got to see how they met and how their relationship developed, because Edmund had to stop being a Shadowhunter in order to marry Will's mother. So it was lovely to see this because you got to see a side of the Shadowhunters that perhaps we haven't really seen before. Someone stopping being a Shadowhunter for love, and that was lovely. I really enjoyed seeing that. We also got to see Magnus's relationship with Camille and I don't know if it was their first meeting, but their first dalliance. It was excellent. I thought it added so much to the world we've come to know of the Shadowhunters. It didn't take anything away. It added much, but it didn't leave more questions. It was perfect. It was a perfect addition. I loved it. It was a great length, not too long, not too short. I think that's a 5-star, and I'm really, really happy with it. So I'm really happy. It's very rare that I'm really happy with a short story, but I am, and I'm loving it. The next story is The Midnight Heir, which is... I'm from Manchester, it's hard for me to pronounce. It's The Midnight Heir. Like the hair. Like an heir to a throne. It's not like air or... You know. It's not like breathe the air or hair. It's The Midnight Heir. And that's excellent. That one is written with Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan as well. The Vampires, Scones and Edmund Herondale was by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan, I think, as well. Yeah. So this is another Sarah Rees Brennan book, which is excellent because I was quite concerned. I've never read a Sarah Rees Brennan, but after the first one, which was written by her and Cassandra Clare, I thought, oh, maybe it's Sarah Rees Brennan I don't like. But I love this one. And I'm really excited to carry on. Now I've got my first 5-star. I'm excited to carry on. And it really didn't take me that long to read. It took me about, I think it's about 40 pages. It took me about an hour to read. But I am reading slow because I'm also chatting on my phone a lot, so I always have to stop. I've just uploaded a video and I'm still having a really big issue at the moment with some of my comments for my It vlog. It's just deleting all of my comments, which I don't understand. I find that really sad. But anywho, loved it. I'm going to be reading The Midnight Heir now, and I will chat to you guys later. Hey guys, so I've just finished book 4, which, why do I do this every time? I have absolutely no idea what that book was called. The Midnight Heir. I love that one. I thought it was good. I'm going to give it a 4-star rating, I think, though. It wasn't perfect. I think it left me with a lot of questions that I really want answering. This story features Will and Tessa and Jem, and Magnus is in London on business. He meets James Herondale, who is Will and Tessa's son, and goes and takes him home to the Institute where Will and Tessa are. He then goes to meet Tatiana Blackthorne, who is Gabriel and Gideon Lightwood's sister, who doesn't talk to them because she blames them for the death of her father. And we got to meet them, and that was quite interesting, seeing how she has reacted. I think this one is set 25 years after the end of the Infernal Devices. So I find that quite interesting to see where they've gone next. But the questions it left me with: Tatiana requested that Magnus, for a price, kill 5 Shadowhunters. And he said, look, I ain't doing that, love, soz. And she kind of threatened him, and then they parted ways. And now I'm just like, well, who are these 5 Shadowhunters? Like, surely it's not just going to leave it there. So I'm thinking potentially that's what Chain of Gold's going to be about. It's going to be about Tatiana Blackthorne getting revenge and stuff like that for them killing her father, maybe. I don't know. I'm making that up, but that's the only kind of feasible thing that's making me enjoy this book as much, because I'm thinking surely that story wouldn't end there. So it's either going to continue in one of these later short stories, or that's what Chain of Gold's about. It's about her and these Shadowhunters she wants to kill and her getting revenge. But I don't know. I don't know what Chain of Gold's about. I just find it very interesting. But I enjoyed it, but like I said, it left me with some questions. And even if it was just a prequel build-up to the Chain of Gold series, there is still a long time to wait before I get to Chain of Gold. So I'm not satisfied with the ending, if you know what I mean. I feel as though I had this, then I have the rest of these short stories. Then I have the Codex, the Tales from Shadowhunter Academy, then the Dark Artifices series, and then Ghost of the Shadow Market, The Lost Book of White, Red Scroll of Magic, blah, 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 then Chain of Gold. I'm like, that is too long a wait for us to have a short introduction, asking questions now, you know? So, 4-star rating, really enjoyed it. Love seeing Will, Jem and Tessa. Love getting that little introduction to James Herondale. I enjoyed that. I don't know if I like him as a character. He's very much how Will was when we first met him, and I didn't like Will until I found out more about him in the next book. So I'm interested to see how I find him once we reach Chain of Gold, if that's where he appears. I think he appears in Chain of Gold. So the next story is The Rise of the Hotel du Mort, which I like the sound of. We get more vampire content, which I love. I'm assuming we get to see how the vampires take over the hotel. And that is Cassandra Clare and Maureen Johnson. So we now get our second Maureen Johnson book. And this is the 5th story overall. There are 11. So after this one, I'll be getting to the halfway point, which will be really good as well. And I'm very excited about that. So, chat to you guys when I finish the next book. I've just finished the next book, which is The Rise of the Hotel du Mort. This one was really good. I enjoyed this one. A lot of fun. I think a 4-star book. I didn't get any extreme feelings towards it, but I did like the references to the Wall Street crash in New York. I thought that was quite good because it was set at that time, and it was interesting to see that happen and how that influenced Magnus's life and things like that. I don't feel as though the story really had a connection to the Hotel du Mort, though. It was like a literal 3-page thing at the end of how the hotel came to be. But I found that to be quite an interesting story, being about the hotel, and not about the hotel, about the Wall Street crash and things like that, and how Magnus made it through things such as that, because it's interesting to think someone who's been alive for so long, how have they coped with things like the war or stuff like the Wall Street crash if he was living in New York at the time and things like that. It's interesting to think how someone who is alive for so long coped with things like that, because stuff like that you never really get to see, and it was really good to see something like that, and I'd be really interested to see what he thought. Like, I'd love to see what he thought of other things, like, you know, how did he cope during the war? Was he involved in any way, or did he just stay away because that was a mundane thing? Or how did he cope in the crash of the Wall Street? Like, how did he cope? He's living in New York. How did he cope with something like 9/11? I would love to see stories of that. How did the Shadowhunter world, how did the Downworld world, how did they survive with mundane things? How did that impact them? Things like that. I would find that really interesting. So I found that interesting, but I don't really think it connected to the rise of the hotel until like the last few. So I'm going to give this one a 4-star, I think, which is good. These stories have like just been improving since the first ones. So I'm excited to read the next one, which is Saving Raphael Santiago. Yes. And that is a story with Sarah Reese Brennan. And I'm really interested to see, because when the Mortal Instruments started, I hated Raphael. I couldn't stand him. He was a horrible, horrible creature. And then by the end of the Mortal Instruments, I loved him. I thought he was an amazing character. He was really interesting. He'd grown on me so much. And we knew that Magnus saved his life after he got turned into a vampire. And I would love to read this now and see how that came about. And I get to. So I'm going to update you when I get to the end of that one. But this is actually really improving, and I'm really happy with it. So, I just finished Saving Raphael Santiago. That was a good story. It took me a long time to read, I'm going to be honest with you. It took a long time to read because these books, this is my issue with the book as a whole, and this is probably going to be reflected in my rating. Each short story is written as like one long chapter, which means each chapter is 40 pages long. And it takes me forever to read because I'm someone who loves a short chapter where there's breaks in between, so I know I can take them. Whereas, like, I could probably read 40 continuous pages, no problem, if there were short chapters, and if just so I knew I could have the break, you know? Whereas if there is no place where you can actually take a break, it feels like a drag for me. And it's been difficult to read the book knowing that that was how it was. And I felt it all the way through, but for some reason, because I'd already read a story today, that was how I felt reading this one. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to take a break, and then I'll probably come back and read a bit more later. But I really enjoyed that story. I love seeing how Raphael and Magnus met. I love seeing how Raphael got turned into a vampire, because we actually got to see snippets of that story in City of Heavenly Fire. We found out that Magnus's mom asked Magnus to save him, and that's how he became a vampire, etc., etc. And it was lovely to actually see that story. And it made me really emotional reading it, to be honest, seeing how close he and Magnus got in that time, even though they had a bit of a we don't like each other banter. I thought it was really cute to see that, because I just love seeing it. And it made that scene in City of Heavenly Fire so much more powerful. And it made me really upset to the point where I teared up. Didn't cry, but I teared up knowing that Raphael dies later on. It broke my heart because I got to see him now just becoming a vampire and then remembering how he died later on with Magnus there. It was sad. I'm devastated Raphael died. I'm absolutely devastated. I'm hurt. It's given me a lot to think about. But anyway, I'm going to take a break because, like I said, reading these as long chapters is absolutely killing me off. But I'm going to come back. The next story, we've just actually had The Rise of the Hotel du Mont. And I think the next story is The Fall of Hotel du Mont. So that'll be quite interesting to read that next story. I'm going to take a break and then I'll come back to that one. So I'll let you know how I feel when I read the next story. I will chat to you guys later on. I just realised I forgot to tell you. I'm going to give Saving Raphael Santiago a 4-star rating because I really enjoyed it. It was excellent. Oh, actually though, am I only giving it a 4-star because I felt as though it took a long time to read? because maybe it deserves a 5. Because it gave me a lot of emotion. It didn't need to be longer. It was excellent. Although it has made me crave more Magnus and Raphael content. You know what? I'm going to give it a 5-star rating because I enjoyed it. Yeah, there we go. 5-star rating. We will leave it at that. And I'll chat to you guys when I finish the next short story. See you in a bit. So, I have just finished The Fall of the Hotel du Mont. I enjoyed that one. It was okay. It wasn't the best, if I'm honest. I think I'm going to give it a 3.5 star because it was a very good story, but it was very just very middle. I didn't get filled with a lot of nostalgia, even though it was the Hotel du Mont, even though it had characters in it from previous, like Camille and obviously Magnus and Raphael appeared, but I was just like, okay, yeah, it's fine. It was okay. So it's very middle of the road. Thought it could have been better, but I did enjoy it. It was a nice, interesting story. It had a lot of historical elements of the 1970s and the huge drug addictions that were going around, things like that. And I really loved seeing again that Magnus was kind of living through that and what he did and how it affected him and the people he knew and things like that. I did enjoy that. Yes, overall it was a very good story. Not really much happened. I don't feel as though it necessarily added to the original Mortal Instruments or Infernal Devices that I'd read. Just mainly because it ended with the annoying thing of him getting his memory erased of those 2 weeks because he don't want to remember Camille as the drug addict vampire that she came to be in this one. So it just kind of felt a bit pointless, you know, because at the end of it he forgot it all anyway. And it was nice for us to read it, but because he doesn't remember it, it doesn't add an extra layer to anything. If, for example, I go back and read the Mortal Instruments, because nothing new necessarily happened. And nothing that was recalled and we got to see how it played out. Like, you know what I mean. Nothing got mentioned in the Mortal Instruments of this time of Magnus's life, and it wasn't like we got to go and see it all happen and we got a little extra tidbit of information. It was just a fine story. It was an interesting story. It was a nice story, but it just didn't give me that, oh, I'm so glad this story was in there vibe. So yeah, it was decent. The next one is What to Buy the Shadowhunter Who Has Everything and Who You're Not Officially Dating Anyway, by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Reese Brennan. And I think this one's Alec. I think this contains Alec, which I like. I don't really like Alec as a character, but I like that it's now at a point where the Mortal Instruments characters are in it. I like this. I just flipped over to the next page. Beautiful illustrations. Like, I love these illustrations. But it says here on this writing, is Alec your lover? And like, it's a demon talking, and it mentions Alec. So obviously, Alec is going to be a prominent character, and I'm liking that.
Hey guys, so I have just finished Bane Chronicles story, whatever number, and the name of that story is, it's a long story. What to Buy the Shadowhunter Who Has Everything. This was a story about Magnus and his relationship with Alec. This was just about when it started. They'd been together a few months. It was Alec's birthday, and Magnus was trying to decide what to get him and whether he should get him anything because he doesn't want to come on too keen, frighten Alec away. And I really enjoyed this story. It was quite a good story. I absolutely loved the demon. Yeah, there's a demon in this one, and he is called something. Here it is. He is called Elias. I don't know if that's right, but he's called Elias, and he's funny. He was just really funny. He was just like, get him a scented candle. He likes scented candles. I was like, you don't know him, but okay. It was just really funny. I want to see more of that demon. And then we got to see little snippets of the Magnus and Isabel friendship that would develop, and I love that. I wish we had a story on them. That would be lovely, but alas, that is not going to happen now that the Mortal Instruments are finished. But I really enjoyed the story. It wasn't the best, if I'm honest. The start of the story was very boring. It just seemed kind of what's the word? I don't know. Well, it just kind of repeats itself. You do this, then you move on, you do this, and then just constantly doing the same thing, like a cycle. Basically, Magnus was ringing, like, his friends. He rang Katarina and was like, what can I get him? Katarina said, piss off, lad. Then he rang Ragnar, and Ragnar was like, yeah, piss off, lad. Raphael took the mick out of him, was like, piss off, lad. And yeah, I was just a bit like, okay, is he going to get him something good? But then we got, like, to the demon part and the Isabel part, and I loved that part. So I'd say a 3.5 rating for this one, just because there were parts I really liked, parts I didn't like so much. So it seems very middle of the road. I enjoyed this one probably more than the last one, if I'm honest. But there were more parts I didn't like about this one than there were parts I didn't like about the last one. It's all confusing. Either way, 3.5 rating. The next story that I need to read is The Last Stand of the New York Institute. And this one is actually written by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Reese Brennan, and Maureen Johnson. So that's going to be interesting. But there's this one, and then there is another one, which is The Course of True Love. And then I think there's a tiny one at the end called, like, The Voicemail of Magnus Bane or something like that. Yeah. So they're the three I've got left, which I find really exciting. I'm interested. I'm ready. And I will just catch up with you when I finish The Last Stand of the New York Institute.
Last Stand of the New York Institute. What a good story. How good was that story? It was... there was the circle, there was the uprising, there was the creation of Jocelyn and Clary Frey, because it was when Jocelyn took Clary to lose all the Shadowhunter knowledge and just become mundane. Oh, that was action-packed, and it didn't only add to the Mortal Instruments story, it was amazingly that was perfect. That was what I needed. We needed more information on what it was like in the circle. I wanted to see how all of these characters were. Were they there reluctantly? Were they there because they wanted to be? You got to see Maris and Robert Lightwood and how evil they were. You got to see how evil Stephen Herondale was. You got to see the sheer evilness of Valentine, and even Luke. Luke was just purely on his side, purely like, I don't care which downworlders suffer. And it added so much to this story, and I wish it was kind of longer in a sense, but it was perfectly written. Like, it was written like this so perfectly that it didn't need to be longer. But if it was longer and there was an entire book dedicated to the circle and what happened and everything leading right up to the uprising, I'd have been so happy with that. I would love that story. Even though I've got it here, I would love more. That is a 5-star story. 100%. 5-star. I absolutely loved it. It was perfect. It doesn't need to be longer. I would have just personally loved a longer story. I think it added so much to the original story. We got to see Tessa. We got to see Jocelyn and Luke and little baby Clary, which I thought was precious. Obviously Magnus. We got to see some... a little bit of drama though. Obviously I know Magnus is in pretty much every single book. I had absolutely no fear of Magnus at any point ever dying. And then Valentine stabbed him in this, and I was like, oh my god, he's gonna die. Even though I was like, logically that's not gonna happen. But I still believed for like a second he was gonna die. It was stressful. It was traumatic. But I loved every second. That was amazing. That was the story I have been waiting for. I think that's perhaps my favourite story so far. I loved it. I think that was my favourite story so far. I'll give you a full roundup near the end to let you know. The next story is The Course of True Love and First Dates. And this one's just by Cassandra Clare on her own, which is quite interesting. But I think this is going to feature Magnus and Alec. And I'm excited to see how that goes. So I will chat to you guys when I finish that one. But up to now, absolutely love this story. The book has gotten better as it's gone along, so it's been well worth the read.
And I have just finished the short story.
Chat to you guys soon.
The Course of True Love, which was a Cassandra Clare by herself novel. That gave me good feels. I love that. I've not made it a secret that I am not a fan of Alec Lightwood. He grates on me a little bit. I think he's a very good character with good character growth. But at the end of the day, he's very much controlling, possessive. He's not good in relationships. He's one of those characters you think, you need to grow up a little bit, son. But this story actually made me fall in love with Alec and Magnus's relationship. Like, I got to see a side of Alec that I never saw in the Mortal Instruments series, and it makes me so happy. I got to see him with Magnus, not being possessive and saying this is how it needs to be. I don't want people to know we're together, or if we're going to be together, am I not good enough for you because you're immortal and I'm not, and la 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 la. And we just got to see the cute side of Alec admitting he'd never had a relationship before, he'd never been on a date before. Magnus was very much his first crush, other than Jace. Like, Magnus was the first person he ever considered, other than Jace, who he'd loved for so long. And seeing that and seeing the awkwardness and the cuteness, it added so much. And I loved it. That was really good. I really enjoyed that one. I think that's a 4-star book for me. Yeah, 4-star suits. I thought that was really good. It added a lot to the story. It made me change, not so much change in opinion, because I still think Alec needs work, but it made me understand his character a lot more. And I think if I ever did a reread, I'd remember this and see this part of Alec in the Mortal Instruments, which might make me like him more. Like, I love that it's done that. It's made me so happy. I have one more story to go, which is the voicemail of Magnus Bane, which is all 3 of our amazing authors. And it's quite a short one. I think this one's only about 15-20 pages. So I'm really excited about that, and I will just check in with you when I finish, because that will be my last update. This book just gets better and better. If you start reading this book, don't give up after the first story or the first 2, because they were pretty crap. Like, I thought they were bad when I read them, but now that I've read the others, they were bad. These ones are amazing. All right, team.
I'm happy.
I've just finished the
See you guys
voicemail of
later.
Magnus Bane, and therefore I've just finished the Bane Chronicles. What a good book. This was really good. There were some really great stories in here that added so much to the Mortal Instruments and Infernal Devices series. I'm so happy I read this because it gave me so many good feels. We got to see insights of the Circle. We got to see more Will and Tessa and Jem after the events of the Infernal Devices. We got to see Isabel and her relationship with Magnus, and I love that. We got to see the blossoming of Alec and Magnus. We got some excellent stories. What was my favourite? Let me have a think. Probably, with my 5 stars, I gave Vampire Scones and Edmund Herondale 5 stars. I gave Saving Rafael Santiago 5 stars. The Last Stand of the New York Institute, and the voicemail of Magnus Bane. Yes, that is right. I gave the final story a 5-star rating because it was just very short, very simple. It was literally just voice messages because after book 5, when Magnus finds out Alec tried to turn him mortal, he stops talking, he disappears. We don't really get to hear from Magnus again for a while. So everyone just tries to ring him to ask him to take Alec back. And we got to see all the voice messages that everyone left, and it was so funny seeing like
Isabel leaving him messages saying like, starting out with, hey, do you mind if you, will you please, I think you'd be really happy, and then that leading to, I'm outside your house, I'm going to break your door down if you don't get back with him. And that escalation was hilarious. Great story, so much fun, nice and short, perfect. So yeah, 5-star rating for that. My favourite one is either a toss-up between the story about the Circle and the Uprising, or the story about Raphael. And I don't think I can... I think if I was going to pick a favourite, I would choose The Last Stand of the New York Institute. Just because I loved seeing more of the Circle, and I feel as though that's a story I want to see as a full-length novel. So I think that was my favourite. The worst story was definitely What Really Happened in Peru, which was the very first story. So now it's time for me to take you through my ratings. I gave the first story, which is What Really Happened in Peru, a 2-star rating. Then I gave the Runaway Queen, which was the second story, a 3-star. Yes. Then Vampire Scorns and Edmund Herondale, a 5-star. The Midnight Air, a 4-star. The Rise of the Hotel du Mont, which was a 4-star. The Saving Rafael Santiago, which was a 5-star. The Fall of the Hotel du Mont, which was a 3.5 star. What to Buy a Shadowhunter Who Has Everything was a 3.5 star. Then there was The Last Stand of the New York Institute, which was a 5-star, and I said my favourite story. And The Course of True Love was a 4-star, and The Voicemail of Magnus Bane was a 5-star. I added all of them up, and that gave me a total of 44. If I was going to give them all a 5-star rating, it would equal 55, because there's 11 stories, 5 stars. So 44 out of 55, there are 11 stories. To kind of calculate the average, 44 divided by 11 gives us a very solid, perfect 4-star rating. And I think that sounds right. That is definitely about right for this book. There were some amazing stories. There were a few okay ones, few naff, the one particular naff one, but there were some excellent stories. So a 4-star rating really suits. I think my biggest criticism of the book as a whole, and I mentioned it earlier, would be the chapter length. I feel as though each short story could have benefited from being chapters within a story. So instead of one 40-page story, it had been one story with 4 chapters, maybe of 10 pages each. That would have made it a lot easier. You know, just small things like that. It's just tiny things. It's fine. I've got to the end of it now. It's not a problem, but it is difficult to read 40 straight pages. It's very, very much. But that is it. I finished the story. I've loved this story. I'm so glad I read it. I admit, after I read the first one, I was like, oh crap, I'm not even liking this. I think I actually put a poll up on Instagram as well when I read the first 2. Yeah, I read the first 2 because I read the Runaway Queen as well. And I said, because I'm collecting the entire Shadowhunter series, I said, what do you do if you collect a series but you don't like one of the books? Do you just keep the books you like, or do you keep the full series, even though you'll never read one of them again? And everyone said keep the full series, and I was like, fine, okay. And then I actually got further into the book and I fell in love with all of these stories. So scrap that idea of me ever getting rid of it and never reading it again. Totally reading this again. Probably, to be fair, this is probably one of the only times I will only read my favourite stories from it. But maybe now that I've gotten to the end, I might read the others, see how I feel. I don't know. But I loved it. 4-star rating book. Really happy with it. And I'm excited to move on because there are more short story collections. Next in my list of books I need to read is the Shadowhunter Codex, which it's not a short story. I think it is literally just the codex that all of the Shadowhunters have. But I think this is classed as Clary's version. So there's like drawings and little notes that Clary has written. So that should be a nice, short, easy read. The book is actually really small. I think it's about 200 pages, which I think is amazing. I love a short book. So I think that one's next. And then after that, we've got Tales from Shadowhunter Academy, which is another short story collection. I don't know what it's about, but it's a short story collection and I love it. I can't wait. And then, obviously, The Dark Artifices. And I don't really know what else to say. I'm so excited. I'm happy that I finished this book. I'm so excited to move on to the rest. Just thank you so much for joining me. thank you for checking out these vlogs, checking out these videos. Thank you for discussing with me in the comments, because I feel as though if you guys weren't there to chat with me in the comments about all of these, I wouldn't have carried on doing them. And these are, I think, my favourite videos to film. I absolutely love these spoiler-filled vlogs of the Shadowhunters, because everyone has very mixed reviews on them, and this has become one of my favourite book series of all time. And this is probably one of my favourite YouTube series to film, and I'm so happy with it. So thank you so much for everyone for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And that is it from me. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. Make sure you leave me a comment down below to let me know you've been. If you have made it to the end of this video, favourite story, circle. Leave me a circle. Leave me a circle in the comments to let me know you've been here. And other than that, I will see you guys when I read the Shadowhunter Codex. Bye.
SafeMusicList.com. Royalty-free music for marketing and promotional videos.